Welcome to the AppInTop Mobile App Marketing Podcast.
For so many mobile app developers, it's an all-or-nothing battle out there in the App Store.
This AppInTop podcast is your mobile app marketing advantage.
Let's get that new app of yours moving to the top.
This is the AppInTop Mobile App Marketing Podcast.
And now your host, Michael Bauer.
Welcome. This is the AppInTop Mobile App Marketing Podcast, produced by AppInTop.com. You can find our daily blog at blog.appintop.com and also track us down, facebook.com/AppInTop. And since we tweet, and we expect you to as well, find us on Twitter at AppInTop_com, AppInTop_com. Since August of 2014, over 1.6 million apps have been uploaded to the App Store since it opened, and the vast majority of them either receive no attention in the press or evoke too feeble a reaction in the media to get noticed. However, a staged effort to engage the mass media and bloggers can lead to a noticeable increase in the size of an app's audience. Here to talk about that is Paul Cockerton, the co-founder and managing director of the PR agency Dynamo PR, to talk to us a little bit about how to run a successful PR campaign. Paul, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
It's my pleasure.
Now, large mobile publishers can easily afford a PR firm, but when we're talking about an indie developer, why should they hire a PR firm when the marketing budget might be real tight?
I guess if I talk more generally, once you've made a decision that you need marketing and PR for something, there are two main reasons you want to outsource a PR budget. The first is you don't know how to do it. The second is you can't do it. Once you're there, I guess you're looking for external support, and you want to find a company that essentially delivers value for you. You need to stand out in some way. You need expert help to make you stand out and to spread the word. And I certainly believe that PR companies have the right experience, can offer certainly good chemistry with developers, and at a certain price can help get your app noticed, and ultimately it's then about downloads and driving a successful business for you.
And with you guys in particular, and maybe this just advisory for a general field, is that something that PR firms are willing to work within a set budget for a developer?
Yeah, I think many PR companies have different pricing models. Some will base it on a set fee. Some will base it based on the time that it's actually taken to deliver your project. Mm-hmm. We, for instance, at Dynamo, we offer an awful lot of experience built over many years of how to do this, and it's not as straightforward as it might seem. There are some publications, for instance, which are read by millions, but in our experience drive very little downloads. There are some publications which are hugely influential and can drive large volumes of downloads, and you need to understand what those are, and you need to understand how best to approach them and when to approach them.
So it's not necessarily having the contacts at the bigger places, it's finding the right places to have the contacts.
Yeah, and I guess the challenge is it does change. So it changes just based on time, because your media context may move around, but it also changes depending on what it is that you're developing, whether it be a straightforward game that you're producing, or whether it's a productivity app. You can go to different sources, and there's a long list of them. And one of the challenges that you've got is, I've got like possibly 300 contacts that I can speak to about this. Which ones are going to listen to me? Which ones should I go to first? And probably the most difficult thing that you've got to decide is, what am I going to say to them? How am I going to position my app to, first of all, get them to listen to me? Secondly, get them to write something that's remotely interesting about and positive about my app. And thirdly, which is the most important thing, actually get people to take action. Go onto Google Play or the App Store, which is primarily where we tend to focus, and download and try out the app.
Now, obviously, all of that comes into consideration when one is choosing a PR firm. Do you find that nowadays a PR firm specific with a lot of experience in apps, is that an important thing for app developers to focus on? Are there branches within other PR firms? What is the key to going about choosing a PR firm?
So I think there's three things. I think experience is really important, partly because you need to work with someone who understands what it means to actually develop an app, and in particular, I'm talking about going through Google and Apple and getting it approved, and some techniques around there in terms of like the timing of the launch and whether you can put it in a position so that they can help promote it. And also to have, I think that experience is quite understanding, because typically speaking, we will have I have a company that came to me last week. It's a tremendous app. I'm not going to tell you what it is. And they're saying, we're going to launch it in 2 weeks. And so I'm good luck with that. Because I know probably it's going to be at least 6 weeks away. Right?
Yeah.
So we can build in contingencies for that, as opposed to a company that's never experienced this. And they're going, right, we're going to launch in 2 weeks. We start talking to editors now. We get the screenshots over. Then 2 weeks' time, the editor's calling us, I'm ready to publish. Where's the app? Where's the link to download it? Stuff like that. So I think the experience is quite important. But that probably leads me on to a second more important aspect, and that's chemistry. I think when you're dealing with a supplier, and a PR consultancy is a supplier to developer, you need to have the right chemistry. So you need to have people who don't see it as a large nebulous brand that you want to develop the identity. What you're looking for is someone who understands an app, who uses apps, who understands the development behind it, the passion, the time, the cost to you, and that way you can actually work with them to build a relationship that is much more successful. Because we may have spent years developing contacts that we can call, and we can generate coverage from those contacts reasonably easy. But are they the right contact for you? What happens when things get delayed?
Yeah. What
happens when things get wrong? We've had instances where we've had publications about to press the button, and the app has been delayed and it's not in the App Store. You need to be able to understand the language and the environment to be able to deal with that, both sides, both with the journalist and the media, but also with the developer as well. And I think experience and also chemistry, like that's also personal chemistry. Do you get along well with the people that you're talking to? Are two key factors. And then the final factor, of course, is price. Do I have the budget for this? Am I going to be able to afford it? Is it going to deliver value for me? And some people will have small budgets in the single thousands of dollars. Some people will have much larger budgets. And to a certain extent, that will also determine the type of company that will come and work with you.
And it seems when you're talking about the relationship aspect of it, I think one of the things to keep in mind when you're talking about PR agencies is from a developer standpoint. Let's say you hire the agency, the agency's on board with you, and it sounds like from the get-go, it's good to have an agency with you the entire process that's helping along and making sure all the right information is getting to the right people. But then, as you said, either the game's not coming out or there's a problem with it, it's not going to be a good review. That's where you guys, having that relationship with the individual, whether it be a journalist or a magazine, whatever the contact may be, can get on the phone, get on the email, have a conversation with them, hold things up that may be, or clarify things that need to be clarified for the developer. That relationship plays such a key role at that point.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the media that to a certain extent, there's different types of media, but media who are used to reviewing apps and writing about them, they're now very knowledgeable. Mm-hmm. So what you don't want to be doing is speaking to some PR representative who doesn't really know what they're talking about.
Right.
So that's part of it. So as a PR person, you're a representative of your client, of the app developer, and you have to have as much confidence and knowledge of the app as the developer. Now, it's clear that at certain times with perhaps some of the more technical aspects, for instance, or the history of the development of the game, that you might not have that at your fingertips. But I guess one of our key things when we start to think about launching and developing an app is to try and cover off as much of that as possible, so that we have at our fingertips, images, we have the background as to why the game was developed or the app was developed. We have a lot of the technical aspects of it that we can just refer the journalist to, and that we're able to package that up so that if a journalist asks for it, it's just a press of button, maybe a link to a Dropbox, and away they go. They have all the assets that they need. And it's quite interesting when I look around at other PR companies, because my background is that before running a PR company, I used to hire PR companies to do my marketing.
Okay.
And I would often find that PR companies wouldn't be prepared. Like, they didn't have the latest screenshots, or they didn't have the latest build on their phone to demo. And that's just having done this a few times before. That's what you need for journalists.
Sure.
You just need to have if you're going to start scrabbling around, the journalist is going to go, I'll just get back to you. it's not going to go out, because the journalists, if I was to describe the environments to app developers, you've already talked about, the competitors out there, but just think about these journalists. Traditionally on a lot of publications, the pool of journalists is shrinking. The amount of emails and requests they get for coverage and to cover them, and your thing is the most unique, wonderful, most awesome app ever developed. But guess what? So the other 2,000 that have arrived in that,
right, their email inbox is chock full with people having the exact same explanation.
Sure. So you need to stand out, and so that standing out is sometimes from the email, but often it's about the relationship. You've received an email from a PR guy that you've dealt with several times before, who's provided all the information you needed instantly, and you think, okay, well, this is just going to be easy. Let's find out more about the app and progress from there.
Now, we're talking with Paul Cockerton, Dynamo PR. Question that I've got here, when we're talking about budget and the ability for somebody to hire a PR firm, can you give us a range, typical engagement models, I guess maybe defining a scope of PR service for an independent app developer?
So it's an interesting question. I think you can find PR companies that will deliver certain services based on a budget. So if you've got a couple of $1,000, if you've got $5,000, if you've got $15,000, I'm pretty sure that you can find PR support to match your budget. I think certainly from our point of view, we tend to work on a we've been going for 3 years. We tend to work with longer term clients. We tend to work with budgets that range from $6,000-$7,000 per month upwards. So for small indie one-person developers who don't have that types of budgets, we're not suitable. But we're not just charging money because we've been around for a while. It's all to do with the value that we provide, and whatever price you're paying, what you've got to ask yourself is, am I gonna get a return on this?
Yeah.
Am I gonna see downloads? Am I gonna see my app positioned above the other press? And there's some very interesting techniques and things that you learn. So, for instance, when you're searching on your Android for an app, you'll get presented the top 2 perhaps in a category. If you're basing on a name, you want to be in those top 2. And sometimes it's not just about PR that you have to consider, but when people are searching for you, do you rank above other people? And these are all other considerations that we've built into the service that we provide.
And you'd mentioned earlier, Paul, about a company that came to you and said, well, we're going to launch in 2 weeks. And you're like, I don't think that's necessarily a good idea. Can you engage a PR firm? Is it a good idea to engage a PR firm exclusively for the launch? Because it sounds like from your aspect, you also are not sure that you can do a great deal of good work for them within that 2-week time frame that would be suitable for them in a long-term successful plan.
Okay, so I guess 2 things to that there are times when you can compress the timescales to do a launch very quickly. It does become more expensive because we have to put more resources on very quickly. I think the question of, can you just hire a PR firm to do a launch? Absolutely, because it's quite interesting because it's a very critical time. So, like, anecdotally, you'll have Google and Apple who will apply multipliers on the downloads as well as some other factors for the ranking in your first few days, week, whatever, of actually launching an app. So that's a critical time for you, and it's probably a very important time for you to try and get the word out as much as possible about the app to drive downloads. Now, against that, of course, if you haven't tested this app successfully, if you haven't had an enormous amount of feedback, it's entirely possible that when you release it to the crowd, that suddenly they find some bugs that start getting you 1-2 star reviews. And guess what effect that's going to have on both your ranking and your downloads. So, you have to balance that, which is why we tend, we really recommend to developers, they don't think about PR marketing a couple of weeks before launch. They think about it 3 months before launch. Now, we will come on, generally speaking, a month, 6 weeks before launching something, because we're involved in the development, involved in the testing. We can demo it to journalists before it gets published, and that gives enough time for us to build up a range of media who are interested, who are going to publish when it goes out, and also gives us enough time to feel confident that the app's going to actually work, and it's going to be good. Now, the second part of your question is, there is, launch is critical, but then it's not always just about the launch. I think it's about sustained pushing of the app, whether it be regular sort of weekly or 2 weekly or monthly pushes out through sort of PR and latest developments of the app and generating reviews, because some reviews, of course, online, fine, they can happen instantly, maybe, but you also have print, which sometimes can take 2 to 3 months to come out.
Sure.
And you don't want to necessarily blast all your money straight away. Sometimes it's better to spread it out, because you stand some guys will go, I only want to hear about something that's new, but quite often you can craft stories and you can push out news about updates that will get journalists just as excited about the app and what's going on. It's a story, and a story develops over time, and this is the story that you're talking to journalists about. And if it's presented in the right way, journalists and we all love stories, and that's what we're selling.
Paul, what extent is the developer involved in the PR activities once the firm is hired? I know some people who have hired PR firms and gone, okay, I've hired them, my job here is done, I'm wiping my hands, I'm going to let them do their thing from here. What kind of input do you need from your client, and what is that level of relationship between you and your developer? Okay,
it's interesting. The worst and the best type of clients are those that say, just get on with it.
Right.
You want, PR should be such an integral part of your app development that whilst you may not know how to do it, you should really care about what's being said about your app and how it's being said, and to a certain extent, are the services being delivered? So you do need, I think, to be involved in PR. But what you should do is, if you're dealing with a professional PR company, is take their advice. A company, ones who talk to journalists day in, day out, they know how to talk to journalists. If they say to you, I'm sorry, you can't position your app as a world-breaking, unique, or most awesome thing that's ever happened, please listen to them, and let's think of something else that differentiates your app or has a unique feature that we can play on a bit more, that will get journalists interested. So, and then let the PR company do their job. So I think on the other side, if you are an app developer, I think that just make a second point is you don't want to get too involved, because your job is like focusing on the app and developing it. I think you want to have regular catch-ups, and obviously if work isn't being delivered and you aren't getting reviews, you're going to put a bit more time into that. But it's so it's an interesting balance. So don't be totally standoffish, nor get totally involved, because you should be hiring and dealing with professionals who know how to do their job.
It's not time to go on holiday. It's also not time to micromanage. Someplace in between there is what you're looking for.
Yes, I think so. And I think at the beginning you tend to be quite nervous about it. It's your baby. Maybe this is your dream that you've been spending 10, 20 years thinking about, and you finally got the resources, maybe the funding to do it. So it does seem, everything seems to live or die on this one launch, and you might be so pressured into thinking about it. This is the only moment I've got to succeed, and to a certain extent, it is a great moment for PR when you launch. But there are many other great moments, and one of the things that we certainly believe in, and I think it's just generally good business, is that it's all about learning and adapting and changing.
Sure.
We might have what we believe is the world's best press release and story. We go out to 10 journalists. They're all a bit meh about it, and we're not getting any coverage. So, what do? Well, we don't carry on with the same press release and story. We go back to our scratch our heads, talk to the developer, and come up with different angles and try that again. It's quite interesting. We have. There's a fair amount of games that have been launched on Kickstarter, for instance, which is a very interesting mechanism for getting coverage. But I've seen examples of projects which have gone out once on Kickstarter or Indiegogo and so on, have had very little traction whatsoever. And they've had a few tweaks, relaunched again, and delivered a stunning campaign.
Interesting. Yeah. I would imagine it's sort of that, again, the relationship you've talked about, and being able to go back to that well when you need to, in the case of how the initial reaction may fall. Here's what I want to do real quick. Take a break here. On deck, different apps call for attention from different industry press. Paul Cockerton, the co-founder and managing director of the PR agency Dynamo PR, will help you sort through getting that attention, and will let us know, is it a do-it-yourself kind of project? Is that something you can do on your own? That comes back in seconds here on the AppInTop podcast.
This podcast is produced with support from AppInTop, an automated mobile app marketing platform in App Store and Google Play.
This is the AppInTop Mobile App Marketing Podcast. I'm Mike Bauer. Today we're speaking with Paul Cockerton, the co-founder and managing director of the PR agency Dynamo PR. Paul was one of the founding team of Symbian back in the 90s, in charge of global marketing for many years. Award-winning Dynamo PR specializes in consumer technology and has 22 people working in teams with a focus on mobile, consumer tech, digital SEO, and Kickstarter. Paul, app developers may target specific industry press or app review sites. For game developers, it's about getting featured in the game review site. So how do you get noticed by CNET, Download, or Pocket Gamer?
I think it's always great to have a wonderful product, so to have a wonderful game. You know, I don't think you can get away from the fact that it's having a great game is probably one of the best ways to get coverage, and it can happen. It can sometimes happen very easily. You know, there are the rare instances where you don't hire a PR company, but the game is so good it starts getting talked about, and you start to get coverage. But even if you've got a great product, it's still very rare that it will get covered. And the reason why is that these journalists, you know, they're being bombarded all the time by developers, by PR people, talking about the games and the games that are coming out and why they should review them. And here's some great screenshots, and here's a demo, and get a chance to try it out before we actually release the app. And you know, that's what they're going to tend to focus most of their time on, because it's easy. You know, it's easier to generate the coverage and to write about it. I think that there's a case for a developer for wanting to do it themselves, if you've got the time and if you've got the inclination to do it, if you think you're the best person to sell it, and you've got some contacts in the industry. And I think, but that having the contacts in the media industry is one of the key steps for it. You can't suddenly expect to cold call a journalist or just send them an email and get them to cover it. Often these emails are backed by like months or years of contact and developing a relationship. You know, we're all people and like having a chat and an email conversation and fun and enjoyment, and that's all part of the game. And I guess so. If you want to log into those established relationships, that's often where you'll go for a PR support, because they have built those relationships over many years. And it's and what's quite interesting is that the publications you can go into, you can go, you know, for gaming review sites, you can go for the publications you mentioned, you can even go for some nationals in some case, or some, you know, publications like Forbes, for instance, and these other publications. If the PR agency is able to demonstrate, you know, a relevance or some compelling reason why they should cover the app, there is a challenge in that, you know, don't expect, particularly I think when we talk to companies who are doing some other services who've just developed an app, don't expect just because you developed an app it's earth shattering, right? Because it's simply not, right? It's like back in the 90s, you mentioned Symbian. Companies would announce, we now have a website, right?
Yes. Like that was such a big thing then, yes.
Sure. So and it's just not simply the case anymore. Yeah. So it's just, well, of course you've got an app. You should have an app. I think, you know, what you've got to do is you've got to have a relationship in place. You've got to demonstrate some good reasons why they should be written about. And the key that you've got to really think about out of all of this is that coverage doesn't matter at all if you don't get any downloads. And I think that's the trick that many people miss. That we, you know, one of the things coming from my background, where I used to hire PR companies, where I used to look at our numbers day in, day out of what's going on, is that if I get 50 bits of coverage with a few downloads a day, and if I get one bit of coverage with 1,000 downloads a day, I'm going to be very happy with that one bit of coverage. Sure. You know, and I think that's the real thing to understand, which is why I was referring to earlier. It's good to understand sites that will drive downloads for you, and there's a wide variety of them. So there's certainly what we call earned media, where you know, you talk to the journalists, you gain reviews. There's also paid media where you can also pay for reviews, and there's also many other techniques, such as, you know, advertising your app when it launches could possibly be the most cost-effective way to do it, to bump up downloads, to bump up you know, your rankings. Now, it does get more complicated as well, because if you have, let's say we're talking about a free app, for instance, it's quite possible that you could pay for an awful lot of downloads with people downloading the app who just don't play it after 1 or 2 days. Sure. You know, and the drop off after download can be alarming, and I think that's where that's where PR can be very effective, because one thing, it can be dripped and delivered over a period of time. It can remind people about the app, particularly useful if you have in-app purchases. That we've just developed this new feature, and someone will go, hey, yeah, no, I've got that game on my phone. I'll just go and have a look and play and check it out. And I think that and what PR can do that's very effective, I think more so than sort of paid for review sites, is it tends to be more of a conversation. You feel that when you're reading this article that someone's dealing with you straightforward and honest. It's a friend who's telling you to actually download this app. And I think when those publications, the media, start crossing over into your friends talking about it or chatting on social platforms, that's when it gets really interesting. When you start to have other people recommend the app. One of the companies that we worked with for some time was SwiftKey, which is very interesting. So the SwiftKey strategy was that they invested in PR because they saw reviews being really important to driving awareness. Mm-hmm. But the second part that they really paid attention to, and why they've done so well, is they really cared about the community. So they really focused on developing a community of people who loved the app, who would talk about the app, and they treated them like VIPs. They gave them the ability to input into features into their app.
They cultivated that. They cultivated that relationship.
Yeah, no, it was entirely deliberate, and as part of the ethos of the company. So some companies will look at them and they go, geez, they must have spent millions on marketing, and I can tell you they didn't. They did spend money on PR, but what they developed was, some people would say it was free word of mouth. Well, it wasn't, because they had so much resources in the company dedicated to really thinking about that and getting other people to say I love SwiftKey, which is, and they're coming out on iOS, and it's wonderful.
He is Paul Cockerton, the co-founder, managing director of the PR agency Dynamo PR. In regards to a small indie developer who's considering and working towards the thought of getting to a PR agency, much like Dynamo, what is a means of communication that you would suggest, or a little bit of advice you could give to somebody who's trying to create an email pitch? Is it better to do an email pitch as opposed to making a phone call to, say, I don't know, a blogger or a journalist of some kind, if you just want to get some initial reaction to your game, and a suggestion from you on that initial reach out?
Sure. I think it's the first thing you need to think about, and it's probably the hardest, which is why people don't spend too much time doing it, is what on earth are you going to say? Yeah. It's all too easy to say, I've just got this game, it's great, it does this, it does that. I'd love for you to write about it. The problem is that that's what everyone else is going to do. So you've got to spend time, and this is where PR company can help you, thinking about what is it that's different. And this can be many things. This could be something to do with your game, but it could be something outside of the game that's completely relevant to you at the time. So if something is just if there's some American football game that's out there at the moment, and you've got an American football game variant, there's some event that's happened, you can start to link the two, and you go, well, that's quite an interesting link, I'll read a bit more, because you have milliseconds to gain someone's attention on an email or a call. It doesn't make any difference. I think that you've got to find, what is it that's really interesting, and hammer that down. You can test that on people. You can test that on friends. What's your pitch? What is it that's different? How are you going to make yourself stand out? So that's the first thing, and it's good to write that down. It's good to have that down. So we're going to use. So here's my pitch, and I'm going to use variants of this in email. I'm gonna, we've WhatsApped people, we've Tindered people, we have messaged people, texted people, we've called people, we've emailed people, we've gone for drinks with people, and these are all totally acceptable methods of getting communication. And what it does tend to do is it does tend to know the journalists, because some journalists will never publish their phone numbers, and actually they don't want to be called. They will read every email. And some journalists are getting thousands of emails a day. They will read, the subject line, maybe the first bit of every email, and then 95% will just get binned, right? Right. With some people, you are sending emails, they are getting read, and if they're just not getting through, it's just because the journalists may be incredibly busy. I think the thing to think about is that you're in a world where you think that your app is the most important thing in the world. You're devoting all your attention to it. you're dealing with other people who are dealing with 10 million other things at the same time.
Yes, yeah.
And you've really got to stand out. Having conversations is one of the best ways. So I think when you've got a cold conversation, it's always difficult, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even whether you're talking to someone, whether you're emailing someone, whether you're texting someone, it's always very difficult. The best advice that I can give someone who wants to gain PR is they should be following these journalists. They should be maybe exchanging a few tweets, maybe connecting with them on Facebook. They should maybe talk about something else, maybe have met them occasionally. Now the problem is that if you're so focused on app development, you just might not have the time to do that.
Right.
And that's where I think a PR company can come in. Now you can. I'm not against people actually trying to do it in house, but don't expect wonderful results if you don't put any effort into it. And that effort comes from months of attention.
Well, and I think even your advice of finding that one thing, while you think this app is the greatest thing on the face of the earth, finding the one thing that's different, the one thing that stands out, because of the fact that, I imagine that when you're talking about some of the generalist press, like the Times or Forbes, like you had mentioned earlier, that's where A, the relationship comes into, and B, the PR company's relationship might be a foot in the door for you, but then you still have to highlight what that one thing that's amazingly different is about your app compared to the sea of apps that are like it out there in the App Store.
No, exactly. And I guess that's where a lot of the things we've been talking about, what we call press offers, where it's a basic relationship with journalists. You're doing a launch for a press, you're writing a press release, you're calling, you're trying to get reviews with screenshots, with demos, with videos. That's all the press office, which is incredibly important. Mm-hmm. But where I think one of the things that we tried to do when we set up Dynamo is, whilst we execute on all of that, what we pride ourselves on doing is the creativity. So 2 months after launch, you don't have a new feature, a new development. The app's pretty good. You're getting some okay reviews, but you want more people to hear about it. Now, how do you do that? Now, that's not necessarily a question of calling 10 more people or 100 more people,
right?
Or what you need to come up with something else. And where a PR company can come in and help you is they develop a creative idea that's linked to your app that can generate the coverage that can drive the downloads. And I think that's where it gets really exciting. Now you'll talk to a PR company and they'll go, okay, well, here are 3 ideas and 4 ideas and 5 ideas, and the key thing is, can you actually do them? And secondly, will it make any difference? What value will they deliver? But that's when you're talking to journalists and you go, look, I've got this crazy thing. Slightly unrelated. We've got an online retailer that makes bathrooms. We found out that people were searching for bathroom suites and misspelling it, so we decided to get a chocolate bath made up and create a website. I
see what you're saying. Yes.
So I'm giving that because it's one of the most recent campaigns we've done. But when you talk to journalists about it, they go, well, that's crazy. But B, the pictures are really gorgeous, and is it really 2 million calories? Right, costing $80,000,
and you've hooked them. So, you've now got their attention. Yeah, but
you have their attention, and we've done this. I'll give you some some more. We had an app and a phone that was developed for the blind. So we did an Apple style launch event. The only problem was that we actually did it completely in the dark. So
I love it.
We took all the journalists' phones off them. We didn't allow them to have any screens, so it was completely pitch black. And the whole point of it was going, this is what it feels like to be blind. And the journalists came out, this very high profile journalists came out there thinking, wow, that was a launch and a half.
Right.
And wrote extensively about it.
I think that is fantastic. And that's exactly what you're talking about, and having that team behind you in order to make that work. Here's what we'll do. We'll take a quick break here. When we come back to wrap things up, so you're thinking about wanting to launch your app globally. What you need to take into consideration when it comes to getting the press you need, with Paul Cockerton, the co-founder and managing director of the PR agency Dynamo PR, in moments on the AppInTop podcast.
This podcast is produced with support from AppInTop, an automated mobile app marketing platform in App Store and Google Play.
This indeed is the AppInTop mobile app marketing podcast. I'm Michael Bauer, your host. We would love to hear from you, so please send us your comments via Facebook at facebook.com/AppInTop. Tweet us your questions, your thoughts, your comments on marketing and PR, and do it at AppInTop_com, AppInTop_com. So let's talk about getting your app launched globally with Paul Cockerton, the co-founder and managing director of the PR agency Dynamo PR. Paul, when an app developer launches globally, how should PR strategy look across different countries, like Germany or China?
It's a great question. I think that there are some. My general advice would be for a large majority of apps that the English-speaking media have can have a very large impact on your product, on your downloads. If you create, and so what we tend to do within Dynamo, for instance, is we will focus on the US and the UK media initially to get coverage, to start traction, and what can happen is that, and you can engineer this, is that the publications we know that will be syndicated across other news outlets in different countries. So that's it is entirely possible to focus on English speaking media and get coverage in those countries.
In other countries,
however, it's not quite the same as working in those countries. And again, it comes down to relationships. So the relationships with the media and the way they work in different countries can be completely different. There are some countries where it's very much paid for, but you will get coverage if you sponsor a competition, and that's just the way they work. And I think the best thing to do is to have a PR company that either it has contacts with local PR companies that can deliver that understanding, that experience. And we'll work with it that way, because I think for more the sort of the smaller, the indie game developers, you're not going to be able to afford a large multinational PR company that's going to add 20% onto all of their costs and everything for international management and planning and things like that. So I think a good technique that we've found as well is that events can be very useful. So like sort of whether it be if we want to talk about games or game developer events, Gamescom and things like that can be very interesting, because what you tend to have is certainly at the beginning of the event, not necessarily towards the end, a lot of media and press are there as well, and they can be although they can seemingly be quite expensive events to do if you want to go and get a stand, but there's ways around that. There are events around, there are promotions to press around events that they're cheaper to get into. It can be a very effective way of being in touch with 200-300 journalists, for instance, and those are journalists that you can then build relationships with over time. And there are events all around the world that we do. I mean, what we've tended to do is, we have people in the US and people in the UK and in Switzerland as well, and then we work with companies in France and Germany and Asia to support our outreach, and to a certain extent it depends on the budget of the client.
So you guys have partners in those key regions, as opposed to a mobile developer looking for an individual PR firm in each of the individual countries.
I think it's just much easier to work with one hub company. I think the time and the effort that you've taken to find one PR company, just multiply that by 10 to find the same company elsewhere. And you have communication with one steadfast person that you're dealing with, who then deals with all of the individual places. No, exactly. It's quite interesting that a lot of our clients, for instance, I'm talking to you here from London. 60% of our clients are actually based outside of the UK. We've got clients in Hong Kong, we've got clients in China, Singapore, in Asia, we've got clients in Switzerland, we've got clients in, ranging from San Francisco over to Boston and everywhere in between. And they've hired us because they've seen that we're a hub, and we're able to deliver coverage across in many different regions. And to a certain extent now, geography matters less. We spend a lot of time in these regions. We go to a lot of shows, we do a lot of tours, so we know personally. I've met a lot of these journalists anyway. It just so happens we're based in London. It doesn't matter. Yeah.
Last question I've got for you here, sir. How do you guys personally, in regards to Dynamo PR, how do you measure the effectiveness of a PR campaign in terms of downloads? In our estimates, a good paid review may result in a cost per install of, less than $1. For you guys, what do you measure that effectiveness in regards to, especially with some clients' experience, and maybe you have an example for us? What's that measurement for you?
It's one of the most difficult questions, I think. From our point of view, what you need when we're talking with a client, you need to be able to directly attribute downloads through to the PR work that's being carried out. Now, in some instances, it's very transparent, such as an article goes out, you see a jump in downloads, you can attribute downloads to that article, that's fine. There tends, however, to be a longer tail effect, which you need to take into account. And if you've got mixed marketing, such as paid for promotions, advertising as well, it becomes a little bit more complex. But so, I think the challenge is that some people will have very different ideas of what they want to measure, and it's up to us to be able to adopt them. So we have some people who have very clear cost of acquisition on new downloads. The problem with that is sometimes that you can pay quite cheaply for downloads of an app that never gets used.
Yeah.
So you need to look at retention as well. So we have some clients who are less concerned about the cost of acquisition, but much more interested in the lifetime value. So what they're asking us to do is to bring the right type of downloads. So, how do you do that? Well, you talk about the app in the right way, and you go after the right media, and then you look at the results. So, it will really depend on the client, and some will have very low cost of acquisition, targets less than $1, it's fine. But we have some people who, if we think about the cost of acquisition, might be like $15, $20, but actually they don't really care about that so much. What they're looking at is the lifetime value, because the revenue generating ability of the app brings them in, a lot more money.
Yeah, and cultivating that community, like you had indicated earlier, is something that those clients will care about a little further down the road.
Yeah, just looking at the cost of an install is just looking at one small element. You've got to look at you have to look for PR. The idea is that we provide a net value to you. So you spend money on us, and we deliver over and above that return to you, and that's an element of how much you pay for us, how much the install, but also the revenue that you're getting from the app, and anything else that app or that coverage generates for you.
Paul, for the past 40-plus minutes, you've given us some much-needed insight about choosing a PR firm for marketing your app, the hows, whys, and whens a developer should reach out to the press on their own or dealing with reviews, and the PR angle on taking your app global. You're like the Jules Verne of app PR so far. You've taken us all around the world. Thank you so much for your time. You are now free to go. Thank you, Paul. I appreciate it.
Okay, thanks very much.
And all of you, thank you very much for listening. This has been the AppInTop Mobile App Marketing Podcast. Make sure you visit our daily blog, blog.appintop.com, where you can find all of this great information and much, much more every single day. Until next time, I'm Mike Bauer. See ya.
The AppInTop Mobile App Marketing Podcast is produced by
AppInTop.com.